Like to give a nice little shout out to Nick. Hello, Nick. How are you doing? We know you're going to get an email on the call, but here's some nice information for you that's going around Dinar land. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Nash. What's up?
Well, Venezuela is going to redenominate their currency. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting. Yes. And the articles that the link that you sent me where they announced it, it sounds like they're using the same verbiage that Iraq has been using for years.
Yes, but there's one interesting little piece to that puzzle. They passed a law first saying that they're going to redenominate their currency.
Mm-hmm.
They've educated the people second, saying that there's going to be a new currency, and then they're now getting ready to implement it. At first, they were going to remove 3 zeros, and that was supposed to take place in June, but they kind of put a halt to that, and they're going to actually remove 5 zeros, and they're going to implement that on August 20th.
Yeah, so that's a week away.
Week away.
Yeah, whereas Iraq has announced that they're going to do it through the CBI, but Parliament never approved it. So it's
never
been on
approved
hold.
It.
Been on hold for years while they drag their feet and try to figure out if they're even going to do it.
That's kind of interesting that Parliament's never approved it, because here we have Venezuela redenominating their currency. Parliament approved it. And then you have the Turkish lira. Back in 2005, right. Parliament approved that before they were able to start their redenomination process. And it's along the same lines. Parliament approved it. They ran a campaign informing the public that they're going to be doing it, and then they did it. They removed 6 zeros in Turkey's case. So all these gurus that have been saying that the lower denominations are out and are ready and it's gonna be distributed throughout all of Iraq are full of it. Because Parliament has never approved it.
Right. That's not something the CBI does. That's something that the government does. They're two separate entities.
The government has to approve the funds in order for them to print the currency.
Right.
So you've got all the design aspect of it. You have the administration part of it. You have all the announcements to the public to get them ready to go ahead and get ready for the dual currency that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. There's lots of articles out there that say the CBI is going to do that, but it's going to take a 2-year process once it's approved before you actually see a lower denomination note on the streets in Iraq.
All right.
And then they're going to run that currency for 10 years, dual currencies for the next 10 years, the 3-0 notes and the new lower denomination notes.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what Venezuela's doing.
Right. It's just a straight redenomination. But in Venezuela's case, they've already come up with the design and shown everybody what they look like, right?
Yeah, you can actually go to Wikipedia, and they'll show you the brand new notes that they're going to plan on using. You can go find articles, and they've got pictures of the brand new notes that they plan on using. In Iraq's case, no new notes.
Yeah. What does the new Iraqi dinar look like? We don't know.
Every guru's kind of said, well, I've got pictures of it, and I'm having a problem uploading it, or it's on my camera and it vanished, so I don't have a picture. They've always come up with an excuse not to put out a picture of the new notes, and one of the reasons is it doesn't exist.
Right. The dog ate my camera.
Yeah. I've never seen a picture of a new Iraqi note published anywhere, not even from Iraq.
Right, which tells you that they don't exist, because in Venezuela's case and in Turkey's case, though, that was part of the education process to show everybody the new design of the new currency that was going to replace the old currency with more zeros.
That way people get familiar with it and know what it's going to look like. It's kind of the same thing they did with the new Ben Franklin notes with that big old wide security strip down the middle. They publish that way in advance so people know what it's going to look like. So when people hand them that bill, they know it's real.
Exactly. Right.
There's always a campaign when a new currency comes out of what those bills are going to look like so that people understand that they're just not off someone's printer.
Right. Yeah. So we can expect in a week, August 20th, to see those new bills in circulation in Venezuela.
With 5 zeros dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to run the currency concurrently. They've passed a law where people in marketplaces have to post both currencies. So if they sell a product, it has to be posted in both values, one with the 5 zeros on and one with the 5 zeros off.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the old currency and the new currency.
Right. The article that I read, it said that they were going to remove 5 zeros. And other articles, they will say lop 5 zeros or delete 5 zeros, but it's basically the same verbiage being used in Iraq concerning the dinar. When you hear about deleting zeros, removing zeros, lopping zeros, chopping zeros, you're talking about a redenomination. So just so everybody will understand that what they're talking about in Venezuela is the same thing we've been hearing from Iraq for these many years, and it's a redenomination. It is not a revaluation. That's
true. People think that their $25K note is going to be worth at least $25,000, but unfortunately, they're referring to the lower denomination notes, which nobody has as far as getting that new rate, because they're going to have two rates, one for the old notes, one for the new notes, which nobody has.
Right.
And people are applying the old notes to the new rate, and it doesn't work like that. That's apples and oranges.
If you've got a 25K Iraqi dinar note, it's going to be worth what it's always been worth until they remove it from circulation. The new value is going to be applied to the new replacement dinar, which hasn't been approved yet, hasn't been printed yet. So you will never see any increase on the current series of IQD.
Right. No matter what the gurus are telling you, they've all lied to you.
Right. Yeah, this is the education process. We're trying to help people understand why their dinar isn't going to go up in value is because the policy that we're hearing about from the CBI is not revaluation. They're going to keep the value right about where it is until they replace the old currency with a new currency, just like Turkey did and just like Venezuela is doing.
Yep. Now, what's interesting, though, is they're replacing the currency in Venezuela, and like what they did in Turkey, is because of inflation.
Yeah.
So in Iraq right now,
inflation. Yeah.
In Iraq right now, that doesn't exist. They've maintained stability.
Right. So they were mainly wanting to replace the currency to what they call facilitate. This is what Shabibi said, facilitate financial transactions and ease of payments. It's not being done to stop inflation because inflation is under control. They would only be doing it to make financial transactions easier so that you don't have to carry a whole lot of bills and that you don't have to deal with all those zeros when you're doing your calculations for your business.
Well, here's one of the articles that is actually from Venezuela, and it says right here, the president of the Central Bank of Venezuela, BCV, Ramon Lobo, stressed that the monetary reconversion, which will begin on June 4th, which is now going to be August 20th, seeks to facilitate economic transactions.
Right.
Basically, you don't have to take a wheelbarrow full of the old currency down to the supermarket to buy a loaf of bread. You can just grab whatever currency that'll fit in your pocket and go and do that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's I can show you a video of Shabibi when he was in Washington in 2011.
This cutting 3 zeros is it has, of course, it shouldn't be exaggerated, actually, the problem. I mean, the question is just redenomination, and I mean, people, of course, you see a lot of people that writing a lot of articles in the newspapers, I mean, criticizing the central bank that is going to, the value of the Iraqi dinar is going to depreciate or something, all kind of talk. I mean, this is a question just actually to facilitate payment, facilitate actually ease of counting and all these things.
Saying we're just doing this to facilitate financial transactions. In other words, inflation's under control. This is the reason we're doing it, so that it's easier to do cash transactions. And actually, not even just cash, but when you start looking at these financial statements with all these zeros, it can be confusing.
Yes, it can. All you have to do is get a little cross-eyed and miss a zero, and you just lost a little bit of money.
Right.
Or gained a little bit of money, depending on which end of which end of it you're looking at.
I just checked earlier today the money supply figures in Iraq. And their M1 money supply is over 65 trillion dinar, and their M2 is over 85 trillion. So how many zeros is in a trillion? Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a million, 9 for a billion, 12 for a trillion.
Something like that.
That's a lot of zeros to keep track of.
It is.
So, well, I thought it was interesting when I heard about the redenomination coming up, because, well, let's see, one of those articles said that minimum wage now in Venezuela is the equivalent of $1 a month or something like that.
Yeah, there was another one that came out that the president increased the minimum wage 3 times the amount of what it currently was, or something like that. So I guess that makes it $3 a month instead of $1 a month.
Yeah, but those people are just desperate because of hyperinflation. They had the same problem with Turkey in the 90s. And then finally in 2005, they removed 6 zeros from their currency once they got inflation under control. And this is basically what has happened with the Iraqi dinar. And the idea that the dinar was devalued by the powers that be at the start of the war, that's nonsense. All you got to do is go back and check the history of the Iraqi dinar, and you'll find out in 1995, 8 years before the war started, the market value of the old Saddam dinar was 3,000 to the dollar.
Yep.
So they had hyperinflation in the 80s and the early 90s because of Saddam's reckless management of the economy. And that's not the case anymore, since Saddam is no longer in power, and you've got a more responsible government in there that's cooperated with the United States. They've got their foreign currency reserves built up. They're not spending their foreign currency reserves to fight a war like Saddam was doing. So they've stabilized somewhat, but that's the reason that the dinar's value is 1/10 of a penny, because of past hyperinflation carried over from the Saddam era.
Yep.
And just like Venezuela's economy brought on hyperinflation with the Bolivar, Turkey's economy had hyperinflation that led them to cut 6 zeros off Zimbabwe's hyperinflation. How many zeros did they cut off their currency?
26, I think.
They finally gave up and said, screw it, we're going to use the dollar.
Yeah, the dollar, the rand, the yuan, all the other currencies that had some purchasing power, basically. You actually use a currency to go down and buy a loaf of bread or whatever it is they wanted to buy.
Yeah. So, by the way, if any of you out there have Zimbabwe dollars because you think that they're going to be revalued or you're going to get rich somehow off of that. Good luck.
Yeah, that bond paper is kind of been put out there to death. You know, there are people that believe it's a bond because it's printed on bond paper, but in reality, it's a lesser grade paper that they use for currency. Mm-hmm. They use actually currency paper to print currency on. It costs more. But in Zimbabwe's case, they use a lesser grade paper, and it's just called bond paper, but it has nothing to do with a bond. It's just the grade of paper that they used.
It's just a terminology thing.
That's all it is. I mean, bond paper, I mean, you use that in your computer printers at home. It's a type of paper that is used. It's just a grade of paper is all it is. You can get different types of bond paper, different weights and stuff like that, and everybody can figure that out. I mean, you can get your regular paper for your printer, or you can get what is known as like construction paper. Everybody knows the term construction paper, and that's just a thicker weight of paper.
Right. So we can hopefully put that to rest now, that what they're up to in Zimbabwe is not going to make anybody rich.
I think that's pretty much it. I think we just wanted to talk about the redenomination of one country's currency, compare it to another country's currency that had been done in the past, and relate it to how it works in Iraq. It's going to work the same way.
Right. Yeah. Years ago, I did an article on my blog called Deleting the Zeros. And I took news articles from several redenominations. They did a redenomination in Mexico. They did one in Russia. They did one in Romania. And in every one of these news articles, they used the same kind of verbiage. They're going to remove, lop, chop, delete, whatever, zeros from the currency and issue a new currency with fewer zeros to remove the effects of past inflation.
They passed the laws, they announced it ahead of time, and then they implemented it. It took, a period of probably a year to do all of that.
Right, yeah. You have to educate the public before you do it. Otherwise, they're not going to know. They're not going to know if the new currency is legit, or they're not going to know what's going on. They might think their government's stealing from them or whatever.
Yeah.
So you do the education process, you print the new currency, and then you distribute it, and then you pull in the old currency and destroy it. And now you've got the new currency with fewer zeros. Nobody gets rich, nothing like that. It's just an even exchange of value, old currency for new.
Yep.
And that's exactly what Iraq has been describing, and it's exactly what they're going to do if they ever get around to it.
Yeah, that's the big thing, if they ever get around to it. But, in Dinar land, hey, they've already done it 100 times over. But officially from Iraq, it's never happened.
They started talking about this, I think, in 2011. And so that's 7 years now.
That's when that one article came out about them going to possibly do that.
Yeah. So anyway, any gurus out there telling you that delete the zeros means revaluation and whoopee, we're all going to be rich? Wrong. Delete the zeros just means we're going to replace the current currency with all the extra zeros with a new currency with fewer zeros. It's an even exchange of value. Nobody gets rich. Sorry, game over, you lose.
What's going to be interesting, though, is, like you had mentioned earlier, all those 3-0 notes are kind of like outside the country, or quite a bit of them are outside the country.
Yeah.
How are they going to get back into the country in order to exchange for the lower denomination notes?
Well, you have to find somebody that's willing to do the transaction.
Yep.
And there's fewer and fewer dinar dealers out there these days. And I really don't know how it would happen. You'd probably have to have a dealer with some sort of facilitator in Iraq or Dubai or one of those
one of the banks that are in the area, yeah.
Right, who can handle them. But I really, honestly don't think Iraq wants those dinar back.
Well, if they pay for the dinar, they're going to lose whatever they have in the reserves for it. As they pull the money in, the reserves go away.
They don't want those dollars going out of the country. And that's what's going to happen if people outside of the country start exchanging their dinar for U.S. dollars. So I kind of think they're just going to drag this thing out indefinitely. Probably 5 years from now, they're still going to be talking about doing the redenomination, but it's still not going to be a thing.
Well, we'll have to see in 5 years what happens.
Yep. Well, that's where we were 5 years ago. 5 years ago they were talking about it, and they're still talking about it. I have a feeling 5 years from now they still will be. I could be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, just so that everybody will understand, this is what's happening in Venezuela right now. Same thing Iraq has been talking about for years, but the parliament's never approved it.
Yeah, until Parliament approves it, nothing's going to happen.
Right. They're going to be sitting there looking at the exchange rate around 1,190 to the dollar, 1,200 to the dollar, whatever.
Yeah, it hasn't moved much in the past 10 years.
Yep. Anyway, if you guys got any questions, feel free to contact us. Me and Nash, we hang out at dinardaily.net. You could also contact me and Marcus Curtis at Iraq Currency Watch. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Yep, we'll be there.
Okay. That's all, folks.
All right, we'll talk to you later.